Begin recording now. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. Myself and Shane, Assistant Principal at Pacific Grove High School, we're going to spend some time with you this evening to discuss distance learning and our schedule that we are going to be bringing forward. So before we get to the actual schedule, I do want to speak to you about distance learning. And when we get to that point where we wrap up talking about the schedule, we'll definitely open it up to questions, comments, concerns that you may have. And again, thank you for being here. So as we go through this evening, let's start off with how we have started our other meetings. And that is by discussing the structure of how we come about designing a master schedule under these conditions that we find ourselves in. And with this first slide, it is familiar information that we've shared, like I said, the past two meetings. And more information needed and followed to develop a master schedule. Where I'd like to highlight this evening is this point right here. After our board meeting last Thursday, I became aware that I did not do as good a job as I should have in highlighting this particular aspect of any master schedule being designed during this time. And that is, we must consider distance learning as an option. And that was always the intent, to have that in our back pocket, if you will, in the event that we would have to go in that direction. Now, I feel many of us, myself included, hoped that we would not have to start off the school year that way. But as we know, the data and the science points to the fact that here in Monterey County, it is necessary and now required that we begin the school year full distance learning. Part of distance learning rules, regulations that we must follow come to us from Senate Bill 98. Here are some highlights of Senate Bill 98 as it relates to distance learning. If you'd like to read the full Senate bill, it is on the California Department of Ed website, and it's quite lengthy, but if you have a little bit of insomnia, it might be the trick for you. Some of the highlights. We as a district need to ensure that our students have internet connectivity and devices. And as a district, we've been reaching out to parents with a survey to check for that, and we will continue to do that. And as a school site, we will work with students and families to ensure that they have a device. We need to ensure that we are providing a quality and challenging instructional program that follows the state standards. We need to ensure that we have supports for all of our students, but especially students who are English language learners, those with exceptional needs, foster care, homeless, students who need mental health supports, and students with IEPs. Also in this bill is the need to have daily live interaction with our educators. This is important not only from the instructional standpoint, but also to ensure that our students feel connected to school. And lastly, we are required to have 240 instructional minutes with our students. So we do have guidelines as to how long we need to be with them, either synchronously, live, like we're doing this evening, or asynchronously, where they would be doing work independently work that's been provided to them by their teacher. Here's another way of looking at it through these infographics. So as you may be aware, when we had to go into a shelter in place back on March 13th, and this was statewide, attendance was not required of us to take by the state. It was encouraged that school districts come up with a method to monitor student attendance, but it was not required. Well, it is now going to be required. And it is important that we monitor students' access to us online, and we will be keeping track of that, and we will be working with families if a student is struggling with their attendance. As mentioned earlier, daily live interaction is required. Now, while daily interaction is required, the state is not mandating a minimum amount of synchronous or live instruction. We will be working with our teachers in the coming weeks prior to the start of school on August 12th, and we will create some requirements among all of our teachers here at the high school. Also, as mentioned, serving students of need and ensuring that the appropriate accommodations are there for them. As I mentioned earlier, we will be checking with families to ensure that they have connectivity and devices. And similar to attendance, it is very important that we monitor our students' engagement and work quickly with our families and students to get them back on track. To that, teachers will be required, and myself and Shane will help monitor this along with other support staff, is that we will have what are being referred to as weekly engagement records. And that is a way of tracking student involvement online, live, as well as the work that they're going to be doing independently. And as a district, we are going to be required to have a plan in place and present that to the state. And this will be something we'll be working on as a district and as a school site. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a review of what was decided at the last board meeting. So first and foremost, school is now starting on August 12th, and we are starting with full distance learning. We have a 3-tier plan in place. All dates listed are target dates and may change depending on current data. And this is just a summary of the 3-tier plan. If you'd like to see the full details of the 3-tier plan, it is on our district website. So we are starting off with tier 1, again, which is distance learning, August 12th, and we will be in this format until at least October 19th. Now, come October 19th, the end of the fall break, if data and the science shows that we can move into a phase of having our kids on campus, a hybrid model, then that's what we'll be doing during tier 2. Parents who feel that it is necessary for their students to maintain distance learning will have that opportunity. We will have tier 2 from October 19 until January 5th, the end of the winter break. Now, it's important to understand that it is possible that we would have to, during this tier 2, switch back to tier 1, meaning we'd have to switch back to full distance learning. But as we all hope, we can get a handle on COVID-19 and make some really significant gains and the data and science can support that, that by January 5th, we can move into tier 3, meaning we have kids on campus, regular schedule, but still maintaining an opportunity for parents who feel that there's still a need for their child to have distance learning. And as with tier 2, tier 3, there is the possibility of having to take a step back and go into a hybrid model, or, and we of course do not want this to happen, go all the way back to distance learning. So again, that's just a review of what was approved at our board meeting last Thursday. Now, because there was, as I stated at the beginning of the meeting, a lack of understanding, and again, I take responsibility for that, in relationship to our schedule that was approved, what we're referring to as the alternate schedule. With it being approved, there was a misunderstanding or lack of understanding as it related to that model then being applied to distance learning. So I have been working with the staff over the last couple of days to address those concerns and to develop a distance learning schedule that complements what was approved by the board last Thursday. So this is what was approved by the board last Thursday, and it is our hybrid alternate schedule, where on Mondays, we would be asynchronous. And again, this is district-wide, K-12. And we would have periods 1 through 4, asynchronous on Monday. Now, there is going to be some students who will only have 3 periods, okay? With the hybrid schedule, on Tuesdays, students would be in their period 2 class only, and there would be an AM group and a PM group. And as you can see, there's 90 minutes built in between the 2 groups, and that's to give time for the teachers to prepare for the next group and also to clean classrooms. Period 3 on Wednesdays, period 4 on Thursdays, and for students who have a period 1, that would be on Fridays. And again, this is the hybrid model. This is the model that would be in place during tier 2, during the second quarter. Okay. So taking this model that was approved, we altered the alternate schedule. And here's what we've come up with. This is a distance learning alternate schedule. We take the 3 to 4 classes, depending on the student, and we have the student in those classes every single day through distance learning. So Monday, first period, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then a 30-minute break. Period 2, 10:30 to 11:30, a 1-hour break. Period 3, 12:30 to 1:30, a half-hour break. And then period 4, 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We felt that it was important that we create breaks that would allow students and teachers the opportunity to step away from the computer, the device, do what is necessary to kind of refresh yourself for the next class. Get outside, talk to somebody in the house, parents Maybe give them a chore. I'll leave that up to you. Okay. But we wanted to create those breaks. We all need them. So Monday would be online asynchronous. Students would be doing independent work during that time. And Monday would also be an opportunity for students to meet with office hours, if you will, with their teacher to get additional support. Those office hours may be optional, or we may require students to log in and work with the teacher to catch up or to reteach the material that was taught the previous week. Tuesday through Friday, it is synchronous. And one of the differences that we have here compared to the hybrid model is that we're not dividing students up by their alpha because there's no need to. So period one, whatever your period one is, you're going to be in that class with all of the students. And so you'll be interacting with a full class and the teacher. So the times maintain Monday through Friday. One of the differences is that on Monday it's asynchronous, and then Tuesday through Friday it is synchronous. Shane, is there anything you would like to add before we open it up?
Not at all. I think we should open up. Thanks, Lito.
Right. You want to explain to folks what they'll need to do? You'll need to unmute yourself.
If you guys would like to raise your hand at the bottom of your computer there, if you click on participants, there should be an icon with a raised hand icon. And I see I have a couple of folks with their hands raised. I will then ask to unmute you, and then you go ahead and unmute yourself. And after you're done, if you could mute yourself again, we'd really appreciate it. So we're gonna start off with, I think it's Sri 1837.
Aparna. My name is Aparna. My son is Ravi. He will be starting the 9th grade this year. And I have a couple of questions. I love the synchronous Tuesday through Friday. Thank you so much for that. I think that's really going to help a lot of students to maintain, you know, what they need to do. I have a couple of questions. So first of all, while I really appreciate everything that you said, you know, many of us work and many of us are working from home. And so while I applaud the time periods between that, I want to consider those folks that won't have that time to give their kids the break. And so I'm wondering if we could think of some way of giving the kids something they should do during that break. Like right now, I'd like you to go eat a snack and, you know, write down what snack you ate or tell your teacher what snack you ate. I know it sounds kind of silly for high schoolers, but it might help a little bit. Or go jump on your trampoline or walk outside and breathe some fresh air. Tell me what you did just now. That might be something helpful. The second thing I'm noting is that, so we're not having electives. Is that true? We only have 4 periods. So.
Sorry. So we are having electives. This is a quarter system. So this is just an example of the period. So if we would have first quarter, periods 1 through 4, then we would have 5, 6, 7 in the second quarter.
Okay, so this will be the semester, we'll have half and half.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, one of the things that I've noticed as a faculty member myself is that it helps me to ask the students to have their video on. Now, I know that all students cannot do that. So we can say, you know, if you can't, no problem. But for those that can, I think that having their video on allows a more, even if they're 20 students, it gives you an idea of who they are and who you are, and gives them this idea of the actual classroom. And that's really helped me quite a bit. I don't want to take too much time, so I'm going to say one other thing. Thank you for making the Mondays the asynchronous, because that's when we have those holidays. Perfect. Thank you. And also, I'm curious about sports and PE.
So PE will take place, and depending on the student's schedule, they will have it daily if that is one of their classes. And sports at this time, the CIF has stated that fall sports will be moved to the winter. So we're not canceling sports, we're just moving it later into the school year. And tomorrow evening, I have a meeting with PCAL where we will design a schedule. And so within the coming weeks, we'll definitely be able to get information out regarding sports and the schedule.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Aparna. And Katrina?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for all the hard work you guys are doing. Very quickly, I got the question answered about PE and sports. What are we doing with our music programs for our instrumental and our choir? What does this mean for these kids?
So as an elective, they will still have the elective course of music, and our music teacher is working with other music teachers in the district to design how that will look.
Okay, okay, so they're planning that right now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then would it be, well, obviously, I guess it would be a case-by-case or an individualized situation for kids that start having the Zoom exhaustion, because even with the breaks in between, 4 hours of being online is going to be a lot. So I would assume we would just address that if our student needed to change something, if it was getting to be too much eye strain, et cetera, just per the individual.
We definitely want to hear from parents if there is a concern, and so that we can work as a team to address that concern. Absolutely.
Okay, do you have anything else? All right, great. Thank you guys again for all this hard work. It's very appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you guys. And William?
Yes, I would, first of all, this is much better than the board presentation when what you had there was for a hybrid, and obviously we're not going to a hybrid. I have a concern, like always, with some courses that you're going to be taking a quarter off, and I'm thinking of language, in fact, of Spanish or French or whatever. And the second thing that did come up at the board meeting I'd like it addressed is, what is the plan for the second semester with the AP courses? And how does that fit into if you have testing in May, but you may have had first, second, third, or fourth period, meaning you've done your material the third quarter, and you've got a long gap before when you do the AP exams. Thank you.
And so that is something that we need to address, and the importance of having a schedule in place then allows us to start to dig in and develop all of the necessary supports and plans to address one of the concerns that you brought forward. And I know there are others who have that. So we will be working through that in the coming weeks as we prepare for the start of school on August 12th.
Thank you, William. And Vincent?
Hello, my name's Joseph and I'm a rising sophomore. I just had a question about homework. Like, how are we gonna do that? Like, I know we have the hours, or for distance learning, you've got the 4 hours, but how's homework going to work?
That is also part of our plan, is to develop a homework policy based on the discipline and the particular level of that course. So we will be working on that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joseph. And Sarah?
Yes, thank you so much for providing us this information. So from my understanding, and I could be wrong, this is looking at what the 3-tiered program that was adopted on Thursday. I'm curious, if a student chooses to go full distance for the semester, what is that schedule going to be like? Because this model would potentially put kids to the hybrid if we get that 2-week period to go back to school. So what's the full semester distance model looking like?
So if we were to meet the requirements and be able to go to tier 2 at the end of the first quarter, then we would, let's see here. Then we would convert to the hybrid schedule.
Right, but let's say I don't want my child to go back to campus and I want them to do distance learning for the entire fall semester. What is that entire fall semester distance learning schedule?
And so if we were to convert to the hybrid, then this would be your students' schedule, but they would just follow it at home. So if they fell into the alpha group, let's look at Tuesday, period 2. And if they fell into the alpha group that was allowed to be on campus in the morning, then we would create an opportunity for them synchronously.
So they would be Zooming in or Google Meeting from home into the classes.
That would be the ideal, yes.
Okay, so is that the actual plan, or are we thinking that way?
So we haven't written it down.
Okay.
But that is as I mentioned, the ideal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Desi? Oops.
Thank you, and thank you for everything that you guys have been doing for the students and for the families. Thank you very much. Mondays, when you say online asynchronous, does that mean that the students are going to have packets and then they're going to have to kind of discipline themselves to work on a packet 1 from 9 to 10, and they have a break, and then the second packet? Is there going to be any type of supervision from a teacher on Mondays?
So Monday, it will be independent work, and that will be determined by the teacher. And there will be opportunities during that time for students to have office hours with the teacher, whether on a drop-in basis, or it may be required if a student is needing extra support. We need to have a schedule on Monday to ensure that we don't have any conflicts. Let's say, for instance, your student wanted to meet with the math teacher, and that's their period 2 class. So they know from 10:30 to 11:30, there's an opportunity there. And let's say their science teacher wanted or is telling them, hey, we have to meet. And so what we didn't want to happen on a Monday is for one teacher and another teacher to ask for the same kid, and now we have a conflict of time. So we wanted this structured time. Now, we're not going to check in and see, okay, from 10:30 to 11:30, is that student working on math or science or whatever the class is at that time? There is some need for some independent responsibility, if you will.
Sure, but that answered my question of, so what you said about the teachers and availability, so that makes sense to me. And as far as the rest of the week, when we say synchronous, it is not always going to be like this, right? Live instruction. It could sometimes just be videos available. Is that, what do you consider synchronous, I guess?
Yeah, so synchronous is what we're doing right now. So there will be every period, Tuesday through Friday, there will be live interaction. Now, it may not be the entire hour, but it will happen every period, Tuesday through Friday.
And will the teacher be available? Let's say there's a half an hour interaction and there's another half hour in that period. Will the teacher be available during that half hour?
They will be, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Julie?
Hi, I have a junior going in. I just have a couple questions. The first question is that has it been considered to run a block schedule so they would have the same distance learning the first periods 1, 2, 3, 4 for the entire fall semester, and then 5, 6, 7 for the following semester? I understand. I want you guys to know how much I appreciate all the work that you guys have done in these schedules. I know it's like working magic trying to make it happen. But I'm just curious as to why we would have that gap in that learning. I especially want to piggyback on someone's comment earlier about if you're taking a language or a math, those skills are built upon. And so if you have a student who's taking that and then they have the gap, whether we're at school or not at school, hybrid or online still, you're still going to have that learning gap. So I'm concerned about that, as well as the kids who are taking AP, they will have that gap also. So I'm just really concerned about the gap and why we aren't looking at just a traditional block schedule, as that's not recreating the wheel. It's been something that's already been out there. So I just wondered if someone can maybe talk about why we would consider breaking these two blocks up.
So in our planning, this is something that we didn't develop from scratch. We actually looked at another county, another district as to what they were doing, and decided that this would be a good fit for us. And it's something that we have definitely been talking about over the last 2 weeks leading up to the last board meeting, as well as leading up to today, and been speaking with the teachers, and we will be spending the time, as I've mentioned a couple of times, and it is nice that we have delayed the start of school by a week to give us more opportunity to prepare for this learning opportunity for our students.
So again, the question would be, I would just like to know what the benefit of that is, because I'm noticing like the colleges do it by semester, and that seems to be the way that makes sense for those kids to stop the learning gap. So I was just wondering where the process of what the logic is behind breaking those up. I was just trying to understand what the logic of that breaking those 2 semesters up that way.
Yeah,
Lito, I might be able to address this a little bit.
thank you.
One of the reasons, Julie, that we've been looking at it this way is we know the probability of coming back after October is low. However, we feel that this structure would allow for students to come back, because if we could go back to the slide, Lito, where it shows the hybrid, this hybrid model in our minds, particularly on the safety level, allows for an hour to an hour and a half between cohorts, between the AM and PM cohorts, to be able to clean. Whereas a block model, as you were suggesting here, would only allow 5 minutes in between each classroom. And then there's also been discussions, if we would have gone that way, to increase that to maybe 20 minutes. And that would be about as much as we could go in between classes to maintain the 240-minute minimum by SB 98. And that would be pretty much impossible to be able to clean in between class periods. So that's certainly one of the reasons why we've come up with this schedule.
Oh, sorry. I think you might have misunderstood the question. So it is, why are you doing 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 instead of doing all periods 1 through 4 in your first block, quarters 1 and 2, that ends, and then you run your second block, which would be what you now have as 2 and 4.
Okay, I gotcha. I think.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
so
I
it's still following
do.
the same hybrid model, but just
right.
doing
Several of our math teachers were actually quite concerned at the beginning of this whole brainstorming idea, insofar as if a student, their last time they had math was last spring, and let's say they had their math class 6th period, which would have been in your idea here, would have started in 2nd semester. The time that they wouldn't have math would be an entire semester. So in our minds, at the very least, they could get it, let's say they had a 2nd period, they could get it 1st quarter and then potentially 3rd quarter, so that there's some consistency there.
So it's the schedule's developed based upon the students with math. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I just gave an example of one discipline. It could be science, it could be really anything.
Okay. See, in my
any discipline.
So my students still could have math. I mean, theoretically 6 blocks. So they would still have that block from summer. They wouldn't have it for still 6 months. Is that right?
Correct. If I'm understanding you correctly, you're suggesting we should go period 1 through 4 first semester, and then 5, 6, and 7 second semester.
Absolutely.
So if they had a 6-period math, that student wouldn't receive any math for an entire semester.
Correct.
Example.
As a lot of them don't anyway. Some students take a year off and then they take math the following year.
Well, generally,
my concern is just the continuing block. I'm just trying to find the logic behind it, so I'm just trying to understand it.
In part, it is to reduce the gap of time from 1 quarter rather than potentially an entire semester.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jerry?
Thank you, everyone, for all the great efforts and tireless support. Thanks so much. So I am a parent of 2 high schoolers, and what Mr. Steinbeck just described as far as the basis for this alternate plan is what I fully understood when it originally was briefed a week or 2 ago. In the event that we were going to school, the idea was to maximize time at school and maximize social distancing. And that's exactly what the alternate schedule did if we were having that kind of a hybrid schedule. With the new information that we just learned just last week, that certainly will not happen, at least through the middle of October. And there's a strong likelihood it extends the distance learning extends all the way through Christmas. It seems to be a mismatch between what we have proposed as this alternate schedule and distance learning. When it was briefed a week or so ago, the alternate schedule plan, there were at least a couple teachers who did highlight the fact that we are moving an entire semester of work into a quarter, and that's rapid fire. And the 2 hours and 15 minutes that were dedicated for a student to be in the class with that particular teacher throughout the week was really a key ingredient to that very fast-paced quarterly schedule. And so we know for a fact the one-on-one and in-class participation is not going to happen through October and very possibly through Christmas. So again, it seems like we have now, we tried that alternate schedule, and there's a survey on it, and I think a lot of people liked it. I liked it. But then when we got the new information about the distance learning, it seems like we need now to shift back to what I'll just call, I think it was the gold schedule, or some of those other, we used to be a hybrid model, but it kept all of our classes, because now we're requiring students to do all of that fast-paced learning all via Zoom. And we know the complications with distance learning or Zoom meetings or whatever the meeting structure is, but there's inherent challenges to those online classes. And now we're complicating it even more by really accelerating the classes. So we've got a mix of a couple things here that, at least in my mind, seem to be a mismatch. My thought would be maybe we just need to relook a gold kind of like schedule where we keep everything like it has been in a typical high school, 6 or 7 class kind of period, navigate through this distance learning, which we know is inherently hard, and just and get through it. Because it at least through October, we know that one-on-one in-class experience isn't going to happen, and very possibly might not happen through the whole first semester. So again, thanks again for all your great efforts. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jerry. And Jennifer?
Yes, I have a question. I have a question about the taking of attendance, I guess. I understand how it'll be done Tuesday or Friday since it's synchronous and the kids will be online and the teachers will as well. How are you handling Mondays? Is that a check-in? Is it if work is turned in? And then piggybacking off that, attendance for families who may still need their older children, like the high school children, to aid with childcare in the home. They're going to be missing some time, and I just don't understand how we're going to handle that.
In regards to Mondays, there'll be a couple of ways. One, teachers checking in with students live and being able to then mark that the student is present, and then through work, either starting work or work completion, the teachers will monitor that as well for Mondays. In regards to the need potentially for students to support other family members at home, I would ask that if that is a concern and there is a feeling among family members and the student that there could be some issues with, let's say on a Tuesday, period 2, being able to log in at 10:30 because of a conflict, we really want to hear from the parent ahead of time so that we can work together to try to problem solve. The communication, regardless of what conditions we're in, communication is critical. We cannot do our job to the fullest extent without a clear line of communication between home and the school. And so anytime there is a concern, a question, we ask that you reach out to us so that we can support in any way possible.
And Yusuf?
All right, so just a quick question. So for periods 1 through 4 and like periods 5 through 7, do those correspond with the schedules we initially got like in the mail, like the final schedule? Or are they like periods 1 through 4 are non-elective while periods 5 through 7 are elective? Like how exactly does that work?
Shane, you want to take that one?
Yeah, Yusuf, they do correspond. And I'd actually like everyone to know that these are actually placeholder periods right now. We're going to look at the master schedule and see how things work out as far as student schedules, teacher schedules, prep periods, things like that. Potentially it could be period 1, 2, 4, and 6, and 3, 5, 7 second quarter. However, the schedule that all of the students received in the mail, as far as your 1st through 7th period, will not change at all.
Okay, thank you.
And Nicole?
Oh, hello?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I do think the new schedule that was approved going online, I don't see that it really works as well. I would also like to consider going back to the traditional alternating couple days, different periods on different days instead of just having period 1 through 4 for the quarter. And my other concern that we have in our family is my daughter was scheduled for a first period thinking it's going to be early in the day, and she has afternoon commitments, which now this 9 to 3 with 2 hours of breaks will be hard for our family. I mean, going past 2:45 when she thought she was going to be starting school at 7 a.m. and ending early. This is a big change to what we had planned.
So I'd ask that you reach out to her counselor, and we can see if it's possible to make some adjustments to her schedule.
Okay.
I'll address a portion of that, Lido. We did take at least a fair amount of student data in the spring. In fact, the English department headed that, and Larry Hackquist was able to put together an extensive document outlining the pros and cons of what students reported in the spring when we went to distance learning in March. A couple of the pieces was it was very difficult for students, particularly with the first period. One of the thoughts was pushing the start time back to 9 would give students the ability to potentially maybe even do homework in the morning, get themselves going, and be ready to be online, in this case at 9 o'clock. Another issue was screen fatigue. And after our staff meeting today, one of the positives that certainly the teachers appreciated and echoed many of the comments that students had given teachers back in the spring was that the 5-minute break in between our traditional schedule, it just really wasn't enough to get away and then come right back to another period. So we hope that in using this schedule, it'll address that issue.
Thank you.
And Perrine, excuse me.
Hi, it's Perrine. My question is, are the kids going to have books from the school? Because some kids, it's hard to read on the screen. And so I was wondering if they would have a hard copy too.
So we're actually going to be meeting later this week to plan our registration day, and that is one of the items on the agenda. And yes, for every teacher that wants their student to have a textbook, we will have textbooks available for the students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Caroline?
Hi. So I understand the benefits of having these quarterly schedules where the one quarter is different from the next because it will make it easier for us to actually go back to school if we can. But I just would like to voice the concern that no matter how the schedule is, no matter which periods we put in quarter 1 versus quarter 2, there will be students who have much heavier loads in one quarter than the other. So I know that with the schedule that is expressed right now, my younger brother, who is a rising sophomore, will be I'm really swamped, and I've taken the classes he signed up for. And I know that he will have a lot of textbook reading and a lot of content to squish into an online quarter. It's a lot harder to learn online, especially with some of the challenging courses that he's taking. And so I'm just particularly worried that it won't be manageable for him first quarter, and then second quarter he'll basically have no school because his electives are all in second quarter, and his AP classes, like he's taking AP Calculus, BC, and AP World History, and then an honors English class, and they're all squished into quarter one. That just seems like a lot of content to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And let's see. I'm sorry, you guys. My screen's jumping around quite a bit here. It's just an N.
Sorry, it was being difficult to unmute. This is Nagam. Sorry, I didn't have time to type my name. I'm Yusuf's mother, and I wanted to voice the concerns that other parents and students have voiced to separate the classes into quarters from the break, the lack of continuity with the education, as well as the load. And I understand you're thinking of the cleaning and the breaks and the transition. Is there a way, I guess, to put the class, kind of separate or spread out the classes in the entire semester, the way it was with the gold red, while, you know, taking into account the breaks in between, or since anyways, most likely we're going to be a full online learning experience than the hybrid model. And if not, and if the load, and if we don't, and we stick to what you guys presented today and Thursday, and the students face challenges, how are we gonna address that?
Lito, I think I can take this one, and it might, if Carolyn's still here, it might address both questions at the same time. And I'm really pulling from our staff meeting today and some of the comments that teachers were taking, and some of the information that teachers received from students again in the spring, that during distance learning, focusing on all of your classes, 6, and maybe in some cases 7 classes all at once, which is essentially what the gold schedule is. It's our traditional schedule, was quite taxing on students. We are quite aware that if we were to go potentially with first period, second, third, fourth, some students would have potentially 2 AP classes during that time. We will attempt to manage that as best we can. However, with this schedule, a student is only focusing on, in a 9-week period of time, no more than 4 classes at one time, sometimes only 3. From what I heard from the teachers today, that potentially could be quite manageable for students. And it's certainly one of the benefits that at least we see from this schedule.
Shane, how many hands do we have up at this time?
We have 2 more.
Okay, so we'll have we'll hear from those folks, and then we'll wrap it up for this evening.
Sounds good. Katie?
Hi, thanks guys. I just about put my hand down again because Shane, you pretty much just said exactly what I was about to say. It seems to me that the kids will have more time with this alternate schedule. They won't be having to navigate all 7 their classes, and I feel like it will be fairly manageable. Also, the students that I've talked to since quarantine began, the number one concern that they shared was the amount of screen time, and that's tricky. It's hard on the eyes, it's hard on the head, and I feel like this alternate schedule is going to be more conducive to a sort of a healthy balance. So anyway, I thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Katie. And Sarah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. I just wanted to say this is fantastic. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness, the time, and the effort that's gone into this. I really do like the alternate schedule, like you've said, with the fewer classes to focus on in a quarter. And as a former military family, we're not moving around anymore, but we have lived all over the country and world. I appreciate, and perhaps it's an unintended consequence, but as we have military families moving in the winter, this will line up beautifully for them as well, so that they're ready to go in the second semester. And I just appreciate that this is not going to do too much damage to anyone, and anyone who's moving away will also be where they should be wherever they move forward. So thank you for everything you've done on this.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So this Thursday is a board meeting. The agenda went out today, and we will be bringing this forward to the school board again on July 23rd. And the meeting, I believe, begins at 6:30. Closed session at 5:30, and the meeting begins at 6:30. On behalf of myself, Shane, and our wonderful staff at Pacific Grove High School, I just really want to say how much I appreciate all of the family involvement that we have had now over 3 town hall meetings. We've gone over 100 participants each time, and I'm just really happy to see that level of involvement. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the questions. And as I stated a little while ago, it's super important that we continue to have open lines of communication now and through the school year. So again, thank you all for being here this evening. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you around.
Very well done, Principal Garcia. I appreciate
you.
your